Hello and welcome to the podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about something which is actually quite niche, even for me. One of the reasons that I'm going to be talking about it is because somebody asked me to make a video about it. And also, I have said more than once that I want this to be a journey. And I know that's a little bit hackneyed, but I want us to explore things together. And it's really useful and I think healthy to have a dialogue with people as we go along. And so, in response to that request, we're going to talk about, let me just put this little slide up for you. We're going to talk about this prosopagnosia, and that's sometimes called face blindness. So, to begin then, from this article, so people with prosopagnosia cannot recognize familiar faces and often cannot distinguish among the faces of strangers. They may also have trouble recognizing familiar places or objects or recognizing the difference between a person's face and another object. So we begin to see immediately here that this can be really challenging for people. So some people with prosopagnosia even have difficulty recognizing themselves. That's sometimes called mirror prosopagnosia. Researchers estimate that 1 in 50 people may have some form of this prosopagnosia, this so-called face blindness. And that's 2%. Some people say 2.5%. So what causes it? Developmental. It can appear during childhood and may have genetic roots or arise as a result of prenatal or childhood brain abnormality or damage. And if it's acquired, it can occur in older men and women after a brain injury, stroke, or the onset of degenerative disease. Accurately diagnosing prosopagnosia often proves difficult because face recognition involves complex processes in the brain, and we'll look at that. Top level, but we'll have a look. So, when it comes to prosopagnosia, face blindness is a bit of a misnomer, absolutely. Someone with this condition might be looking directly at a person's face but be unable to see the entire visage. They might only be able to focus on and identify individual features. Once the face is out of their field of vision, they are unable to retrieve any memory of it. In addition to face blindness, people with prosopagnosia may find it difficult to recognize facial cues and remember places. So, place remembering can be difficult, and facial cues could be things like, someone is signifying an emotion, for example, and it may not be picked up. So the neural basis, and again, we'll skip over this, but I just want to point out a couple of things. So brain imaging research identified two areas. One of these is located in the mid-fusiform gyrus, and the other in the inferior occipital gyrus, so fusiform and occipital. And the researchers studied activation using fMRI. One person was developmental, they studied, and there were two childhood individuals with prosopagnosia. None of the subjects showed the normal pattern of higher fMRI activity to faces than to objects. In other words, more activity when exposed to a face as opposed to an object. In the FFA, so the fusiform, or the IOG, which is the occipital there. Moreover, in two of the patients, faces and objects produce similar activations in the regions corresponding to where the FFA and IOG are found in normal subjects. One study casts light on the important role of FFA and IOG in the network of areas involved in face recognition and indicates limits of brain plasticity, in other words, how much the brain can adapt to various challenges. And I've got a little graphic which I've quickly scribbled up, literally, for you, that we'll look at this as an overview. Again, not getting into it in the way that a neuroscientist would, but I think it's sometimes really useful to get the sense of how things are connected and why things can go wrong and what may be going wrong. So, see a GP if you're struggling to recognize people's faces and it's affecting your life. They may refer you to a specialist for an assessment. And the reason that I've got that, by the way, I should have put it up. That's from the UK NHS. So you can, if you Google in the UK, the NHS and type in prosopagnosia, you will get quite a lot of information. And I think that is extremely useful. It's extremely useful to look at. There's good information on that site, and again, there are suggestions in that on that site about what you can do. I'm not going to put that up here because I think, as usual with a lot of these things, it is important to be directed, or to direct ourselves to the specialists, the people who are able to understand what may be going on, to diagnose and to point to treatment. Because I didn't want to leave this as if you're just there. That's it. There are many suggestions, and again, you can get some of them on that NHS site. But what I wanted to do now was actually to look at an overview of what can be going on in the brain, and parts of the brain. So you should see here a handy scribbled overview. Now this literally is on the back of an envelope, but why not? So what we have here, this is meant to represent the eye. So we've got light coming in, we've got information coming in, and that information is transmitted along the optic nerve, as you probably know, and it passes through the optic chiasm to the occipital cortex, and the occipital cortex known to be associated with sight and getting that information. But what happens there is it can be fed to different areas in the brain. I mean, the brain's connectivity is complex. We're going to look at these two main streams, dorsal stream and ventral stream. The dorsal stream here is really trying to figure out the where, it's spatial recognition. Where is this in relation to? And that, if that causes problems, then there are additional problems if there are issues here. But I'm focusing just now on the ventral stream, the what. So what is this? How can I interpret it? And here we see the aforementioned two areas. So we have the inferior occipital lobe and the fusiform gyrus. If there is damage here by whatever means, then this can cause issues, or it's one of the areas that is suggested that if there's damage here, that it can cause some of those things that we see in terms of this particular condition. And I've put temporal lobe there just to highlight that the inferior occipital lobe is having a bit of a dialogue at times with the temporal lobe, trying to figure out what this particular thing is, this object is. And so if we have this damage, then this is one of the reasons that it's suggested, it seems to be the case, that people can be affected by this particular condition. And so I hope you find that useful. It is an overview, and it's not meant to be advice. It's more information. Here's what it is suggested by some people that is going on, and also the very important pointing to the need to seek professional help, advice, and of course to understand if that is what is going on in the first instance, because as I've said, it is often missed, and sometimes it can be, in fact a lot of the time, it can be really quite difficult to actually get a diagnosis, to understand that is what's going on, because it's prevalent in the population in greater numbers than people thought, but it's just often not known about, and even professionals can miss what is going on, particularly because it can present in different ways. But I don't mean that to sound in any way hopeless, not at all. There's much more awareness, and there's much more help, and there's much more chance that it will be spotted, but that's up to the individual to say, hey, can I get this checked out? Or indeed, if you know someone, to encourage them to go and get that professional help and a diagnosis if required. Anyway, I hope you find that useful. Thank you so much to the person who asked the question. I hope that there was just the right level of, we're not deep into axons and neurons, but enough information to give you some insights, no pun intended, to this condition, and also to encourage you to think about if you're okay, if other people are okay, and to seek that help. I hope you have a good day. For the moment, from me, bye for now.